is such a hassle to get. Yeah, that should do it. Oh man, what a hassle. Got it, yep. Okay, well.
His colleagues. Hey, fellow seekers, I'm Mr. Mythos. In the early 1960s, there was a Catholic priest who had it all. Father Pellegrino Ernetti was one of Italy's most accomplished exorcists, a world-class scholar of archaic music, and an elected delegate of the Vatican. But then, one day, Father Ernetti confessed...
Hey, Di, hi, Phil. Good to see you guys.
...national operation. He divulged the existence of a device so powerful that it had to be disassembled almost immediately after its invention. Originally commissioned by the Pope, this device was codenamed the Chronovision. Allegedly, the Chronovision was a time machine capable of displaying historical events as if they were live broadcasts, including the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, potentially confirming the Catholic faith's truths, as well as its many inaccuracies, exaggerations, and even lies. We're about to enter a dark maze of religion, blasphemy, quantum physics, occult beliefs, and deep conspiracy. This is the complete Chronovision mystery, a tale that stretches from accidental necromancy to a mysterious deathbed confession, and several decades of bizarre controversial events in between. As written numerous times by Catholic theologians and even repeated by the Pope, the Church remembers the future, and perhaps they do, if they've already seen it. But before we dive in, just as the Chronovision would reveal the unseen, our sponsor Raycon just launched their upgraded model of their best-selling everyday earbuds, engineered to let you hear the unheard. The new everyday earbuds have active noise cancellation, quick charge function, IP66 weather resistance, and multi-point connectivity that lets you pair with two devices at once. And they come in several new vibrant colors. My favorite upgrade is easily the active noise cancellation. I like to go walking with my everyday earbuds and listen to ancient mystery podcasts, and Raycon must have employed a secret team of elite scientists to engineer these, because it's lawn mowing season, and my ears can't tell. I even started editing my videos outside, and my new everyday earbuds help me hear every word, undisturbed, and that's why I use them every day. If you haven't yet pulled the trigger on a pair of Raycons, with all these upgrades and a special deal for fans of my channel, I say now's the time. Click my link in the description box or go to buyraycon.com/mythos to get 20% off your Raycon purchase, plus free shipping. Thanks again to Raycon. It's time to tune into the utterly baffling mystery of the Chronovision. One sunny, fateful afternoon in the early 1960s, two Catholic priests, one French and the other Italian, found themselves standing next to one another at the docks of Venice's Grand Canal. They'd been waiting patiently to catch the next Vaporetto, the Venetian public water bus. The two had never met before, but very soon they'd become close friends and embroiled in the center of one of the most unusual and enduring mysteries.
Hey, boss. Good to see you. Hi, Rusty. Welcome to the channel.
The Vatican's New Mystery, published in 2002, the French priest Father Francois Brun recounted this moment in time. Quote, "It was 1964. I had the knowledge by chance of a very strange monk, Father Pellegrino Ernetti, who was waiting for the Vaporetto. I was waiting for it too. I don't know how the conversation began. The fact is that he ended up asking me, more courtesy than for a real interest, what I was doing and where I came from." End quote. Brun introduced a bit of his background to Ernetti, and as soon as they learned that they were both experts in ancient languages, the conversation swiftly kicked off. It wasn't long until Brun turned the subject to one of his most biting frustrations, the practical interpretation of the Holy Scripture. For those who've devoted themselves to what's often considered Earth's oldest and largest continually operating religious institution, the Catholic Church, small wars have been waged over accurate translation and interpretation of the original scriptures. Brun didn't hold back his feelings. Quote, "I immediately went on to discuss my irritation for the new exegetical tendency. which consists in considering the text and even the Gospels exclusively for their concrete content. The tales of miracles would be nothing but fictions, metaphors for pedagogical purposes. The same words of Christ, only
Thank you,
later
Vas.
instructions developed by the first communities. My joy was great to see that Father Ernetti completely shared my indignation. Without a doubt, it was the sincerity he saw in me that incited him to make an allusion to a mysterious device. Since his boat came and his direction was not mine, he added quickly, "If you have time, come and visit me tomorrow afternoon at the monastery. We will talk about all these things with more comfort and privacy."
Yeah.
End quote. As Bruin boarded his Vaporetto.
I've heard a bit about this Chronovisor, but not much. I've never watched a study on it, so this should be pretty interesting. This guy's reasonably articulate, so this should be good.
Alone and headed to his hotel, his mind churned over Ernetti's unusual response to his frustrations. While Ernetti clearly agreed with him, the Italian priest not so subtly hinted at a complete solution, that there wouldn't be any reason to doubt or debate about the contents of the Bible if some sort of device possessed by the Vatican was capable of providing definitive answers. Interpretation would never be a problem again. But Father Brun had no idea what to make of the device, as the monk didn't elaborate. But whether it was a secret papal tool for divination or just an intellectual thought experiment, he was certainly intrigued. So,
Guys, I like Jonathan Kahn, but I don't play him because he's copyrighted, because he sells a lot of books. But
the very next day, Brun took the Vaporetto to the San Giorgio Maggiore monastery to accept Ernetti's invitation.
And what happened, Jonathan Kahn was talking about the rapture, and he went through everything, why there's a rapture, why there's not a rapture. And the way he done it, there is no rapture. I didn't think there was a rapture anyway, but the way Jonathan Kahn does it, it's by the book. It's not rapture.
This decision would...
And I didn't think it'd be rapture because everyone knows about it.
Irrevocably altered the course of his life. Father Francois Brun passed away in January of 2019, and up until his last breath, he vouched for the truth of the Chronovisor and the sincerity of his...
Thus, I don't think it's happened on the 23rd. There's a rapture in my OSD code, but that's at the end of the movie, appropriately enough.
Friend Father Pellegrino Ernetti. Brun's 2002 book, The Vatican's New Mystery, is rather obscure and difficult to read, with no English translation ever published. I ended up acquiring 2 copies, the French original and a slightly rarer Italian edition, so that I'd be able to cross-compare when translating and make sure I'm reading everything correctly. Brun's book is widely considered to be the most accurate and complete resource on the Chronovisor mystery, and yes, I manually translated both copies page by page and read the entire book a few times.
Okay, guys, I gotta say it. I'm not a fan of his shirt.
It's a very unique and unconventional book. All throughout, it's very obvious that the Chronovisor mystery and the fate of his longtime friend Pellegrino Ernetti did genuinely haunt Father Brun for decades. As he wrote in the introduction, quote, "Observing the little that remains of disappeared civilizations so grandiose, there is a clear impression that oblivion, insensibly, holds everything, and that everything returns as if nothing had been. But I am convinced that nothing of what we say, we do, or even think is lost. There is nothing that one day should not be revealed," says the gospel. Someone has truly realized an appliance that would allow you to know all this, to see, to listen to the men of the past, not a reconstruction, but the event itself, when it really occurred. This man was a priest, like me, more precisely a monk, a man of faith, prayer, and a man of science. Today he passed into the afterlife.
Diane, that's what I was thinking. There's going to be a hell of a lot of disappointed Christians because we don't know the day or hour. And they can dance around it all they want, but the fact is we don't know. We just don't know. So
He brought his secret with him.
I'd be very surprised if we got raptured. Not because we got raptured, because of the timing. The actual rapture would come at the right place. I'd feel comfortable taking that.
As they say in science fiction novels, he left traces, documents, but
Hey,
they are not
Talia, good to
accessible.
see you.
They are carefully kept under key, preserved but hidden. I will explain why I keep the very strong impression that there has been and that there is something that the high authorities hide from us, probably for the good of humanity. End quote. Bruce presents his recollections, personal opinions, research findings, transcripts, and extensive investigations that he carried out after Ernetti's death, regardless of the threat to his own reputation and career. He believed in the Vatican time television and was fully aware of how crazy that sounds. The clock ticks, the past awaits. So, rewinding to where we left off, it was the next morning. Father Brune arrived at the small wooden doors of the San Giorgio Maggiore monastery and knocked upon them. The doors pulled open, and the French priest was met by Father Ernetti's humble smile, ushering him to come inside. The two made their way down the shaded, quiet hallway toward the monk's monastic cell. As Brune...
Diane, I wasn't sure of it. I'll admit I wasn't sure on the rapture being on the 23rd, but just not my common sense, just my heart said it's not true. It's the wrong time. So there is going to be a lot of disappointed Christians. And we're going to look really bad to some people too.
Called, quote, Father Ernetti's office was a large, long room with a very high ceiling. It included an immense table, also very long and robust.
Yeah, Talia, YouTube's a light with kids and parents having dreams about the rapture. The YouTube's a light with it. Just look up 23rd of September rapture.
Of solid wood, covered with books in evident disorder. The table...
Yeah, Diane, I think we'll be at war by Christmas. I think we've got a lot to go for. Where's the two witnesses? How come they're not here if we're in... Because some people say we're in tribulation now. So where's the two witnesses then?
Was certainly ancient, as well as the chairs with their high backs, a little in the Louis XIII style. It would have been an...
Yeah, Talia, but this one backs it up a lot with scripture. And, yeah, backs it up with scripture.
Extraordinary set.
But not the whole way. You can pick there's an avenue of it not being right.
Setting for a theatrical work. For example, for a
Thanks,
performance
babe.
of Faust. Only a phone seemed rather out of place and spoiled the whole setting. End quote. After exchanging friendly pleasantries, they sat together in the high chairs and spent time getting to know each other, their family, backgrounds, studies, careers, and general interests. It was clear the two priests had a lot in common and a lot to talk about.
Guys, have you been seeing how all these ones who trolled, what's his name? Charlie Clerk, or Kelk or something? Whoever teased him on the net, whoever bagged his thing, if he worked for the government or that, they sacked them. They went in and sacked them all. All the ones who bagged Charlie Kirk on camera, they all got the sack.
However, as the icebreaker conversation dragged on for well over an hour, Brune could tell that Ernetti was avoiding the actual issue at hand, the mysterious device he'd hinted at the day before, and the reason why Brune had been invited over in the first place. Finally, Father Brune decided to ask directly, and the monk's face turned visibly serious. For a long moment, the room went silent. Quote, Father Ernetti probably regretted having committed too soon to a fellow brother, about whom he still knew almost...
But as soon as I wake up, before I have a coffee and that, I say the Lord's Prayer, and I say that and talk to Jesus a bit. Then the rest of the day, I just get on with my life, but I chat to him at the same time, and he chats back, but I don't mean hearing him talk back, but you know what with your mind, what you're seeing or what you're feeling.
Nothing. So before coming to the revelation of this mystery, he wanted to test me. He then began to tell me an extraordinary episode, which was not yet what I was waiting for, but which was already itself a prodigious discovery, perfectly incredible, astonishing, and yet authentic. That day he would not communicate anything else to me, but it was enough to make me return to the hotel in the evening, completely bewildered. End quote. The story Father Ernetti told to Brune regarded the rather unusual origins of his work in paranormal research for the Vatican. On September 17th, 1950.
Guys, we all know about this Chronovision, but we've never gotten a detail on it. Well, I haven't anyway. So this is the first time I'm going to get some details on it. But we did know through MK Ultra and things like that, they had one of these. That's how come we know.
52. In a university laboratory in the historic city of Milan, Father Pellegrino Ernetti was filtering out harmonics from Gregorian chants using a wire recorder in order to obtain the purest audio of the chants. Working alongside him in the lab was...
So I'm just going to say it. Something shifty went on there with Charles Kirk. That something fishy went on there.
Father Augustino Gemelli, a respected physician and psychologist, and a notable skeptic of paranormal phenomena. That detail is important because Gemelli would later verify that this incident happened exactly as Ernetti described. As the pair worked on the chants, their wire recorder began to malfunction. According to Brune, quote, Father Gemelli had an old habit from the death of his father, like an automatic tick. Every time he was presented with some difficulties, he exclaimed, thinking of his father, "Ah, Dad, help me." That day, the wire...
Wow, Diane, that many? Wow. Wow, I'm pretty stunned at that. That's stunning.
Recorder broke once again. "Ah, Dad, help me," he says immediately, as usual. After they set the wire recorder back at...
Last night I was watching YouTube and this guy said he saw in a dream or something, a vision, that Australia was getting blown up with a volcano. And I said to the guy, we haven't got any volcanoes in Australia, have we? So we looked it up and no, we got dead volcanoes, but no live ones.
Motion.
But they'll make anything up to suit.
Out of the voices chanting in Gregorian, a different male voice came through. "Of course I will help you. I am always with you." Terrified, Gemelli stopped the device immediately. Father Ernetti insisted, though, "We have to continue. We have to hear what comes after." He set the wire recorder in motion again, and the voice returned. "Zucchina, it is clear. Don't you know it is I?" End quote.
I think his name was James Basaggi. He was involved in MK Ultra, and he was also involved in its Chronovision. What was his name? Basaggi. Something Basaggi was his name.
This supernatural occurrence is actually elaborated on further in official Vatican records in a report made by Archbishop Bruno Heim, the aide of Pope Paul VI. Quote, in 1952, two Catholic priests received a foreign voice that identified as Dr. Augustino Gemelli's father. They had the recording tested at the Laboratory of Physics of the University Cattolica del Sacro Cuore in Milan. The two priests could hear the voice very clearly. This was his father's voice addressing him by the nickname he used during Gemelli's childhood, Zucchina. End quote. As Catholic priests, both Ernetti and Gemelli were disturbed and quite fearful of the implications of communicating with the dead, even if it was by accident.
Ask him then.
As a form of necromancy, any communication with the dead is typically viewed as dangerous and forbidden by the Catholic Church. Thankfully, because Father Gemelli was president of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, he and Ernetti were able to directly approach Pope Pius XII for guidance. According to a 1990 article in the Italian magazine Astra, the Pope responded, quote, "Dear Father Gemelli, you really do not need to worry about this. The existence of such voice is a strictly scientific fact and has nothing to do with spiritualism. The recorder is totally objective. It receives and records the sound waves from wherever they are coming. This event may perhaps become the cornerstone of a building for
Yeah.
scientific studies, which will strengthen man's belief in an afterlife. End quote.
But I asked Jesus questions, and some questions took, I'm not joking, decades to answer. It took a few decades in some cases to answer, but he always does answer, which surprised me. He does answer. It's not in your time, but everything I've ever asked for, it's been given. I've never wished for money. I never knew to do that. I knew not to do that. So,
The Pope's unexpected reassurance lifted guilt and concern from both men's shoulders, and in particular, Father Ernetti found himself inspired in a way he never expected. Ernetti explained to Father Brun that as he continued the Gregorian chant experiments with Father Gemelli, he
okay, we're not supposed to be doing Gregorian chants.
meditated on the Pope's words, the way Ernetti interpreted it. Pope Pius XII had suggested that sound waves
Pretty sure you can't do any sort of that in the Bible.
from other realities and other times existed and could conceivably be picked up by a machine in the present reality and time. This idea was intriguing enough, but what if it could go further than just sound? Ernetti speculated that, just as sound is made up of waves, perhaps everything in existence might be constituted of not solid particles, but waves as well. This idea that waves might form the basis of all matter has strong roots in biblical scripture. Specifically, in the story of Genesis, the creation of the universe, earth, and all life within it is presented as a product of the Word of God, or an emission of sound waves from God, if the scripture is taken literally. In the very first chapter of the said is used 8 times, specifically for the methodical creation of everything in existence. So, could the truth be that everything is made up of waves, like the Bible seems to suggest? Well, modern quantum physicists say yes, and so did Father Ernetti. But the thing about waves is that they never actually go away. According to the principle of conservation of energy, a wave's energy and underlying quantum information never disappears, but is simply transformed into
I heard that you can't transfer. You can transfer energy, but you can't dispel it.
other forms. With all these ideas circling his head, at some point during the last of their Gregorian chant experiments, Father Ernetti was struck with a moment of eureka. What if somebody could engineer a machine capable of capturing and displaying the waves of bygone eras? A chronovisor, or literally a time
And that's how they done it. They reckon they traced Jesus' voice and zeroed in from there.
seer. And this is how Ernetti's work with time machines began. Father Brun writes in his book, quote, I don't remember very well how our first meeting ended, but what I'm sure of is that that day I went back to the hotel completely stunned. As long as I was with Father Ernetti, his strength of conviction was such that what he told me seemed almost natural to me. But then, left alone, reflection took over. All of this was completely crazy. Did I dream of Father Ernetti as if he were a mad scientist as we read about in comics or science fiction novels? End quote. In any investigation, you need to know who you're dealing with, and Father Pellegrino Ernetti was quite the person. Born in 1925, at a young age he dedicated his life to Christianity, and over the
100
years,
years old
he
this
became
year.
recognized by the Vatican as one of the most talented individuals to have chosen the path. Beyond his ordainment as a priest, Ernetti became one of Italy's most accomplished and prolific exorcists. Father Gabriel Amorth, popularly known as the Pope's exorcist for his service as the official exorcist of the Vatican, wrote
Didn't Russell Crowe just make a movie on that? I'm pretty sure he did.
about Ernetti many times in his books with the utmost respect. Quote, Father Pellegrino Ernetti, the most famous exorcist in the Venice area, who is also famous as a biblical and music scholar, experienced some very serious exorcism cases. He was a celebrated exorcist who had practiced in Venice for 40 years. End
Wow.
quote. During the peak of Ernetti's exorcism career, he received hundreds of patients each week. Father Brun notes that Ernetti was always careful to discern whether an individual was suffering from a psychological or physical problem, which required treatment from a medical professional, or a genuine demonic possession, in which case an exorcism ritual was appropriate. Father Ernetti even wrote his own book on exorcism, titled The Likes and Dislikes of the Devil. Ironically, for a man who apparently invented the time television, he actually lists the television as number 5 on what the devil likes. To be clear, I'm pretty sure he's referring to a standard television. That said, I found what he wrote about the television to be quite, curious. Speaking in the first-person perspective as the devil, Ernetti writes, quote, "The television, it is my device. I invented it in order to destroy the single souls and the families. I separate them. I break them up with my subtle and penetrating programs. The television is the center of attraction with which I draw in so many priests, brothers and sisters, especially in the late hours, and then I do not let them pray. In an instant, I present myself in the whole world, and they listen to me, and they all see me." End quote. Make of that what you will. Now, speaking generally, there's no question that Father Ernetti was intellectually gifted. He exceeded in his education in a multitude of academic fields, holding doctoral degrees in ancient Oriental languages, philosophy, theology, and pre-polyphonics. In particular, Ernetti was a surprisingly influential, world-renowned expert in pre-polyphonics, also known as archaic music. Even more than exorcism, archaic music was his true gift and specialty. He spent the majority of his career researching and advancing this field, leading the pre-polyphonics departments of fine arts universities, and writing foundational works on the subject, such as Words, Music, and Rhythm, and his multi-volume magnum opus, General Treatise on Gregorian Chant. These works remain influential and referenced to this day. Father Ernetti had such a great ear that the Vatican even elected him as their delegate for the development of church music. It's an understatement to say that this man was extremely respected as an intellectual in the academic community, as well as a servant of God in the Catholic Church. In both worlds, his colleagues recognized his dedication and personal integrity. Despite becoming well known for his talents, he was never known to brag or exaggerate. In fact, most of his peers described him as a quiet intellectual. Looking at Pellegrino Ernetti's life, the Chronovisor was arguably the only controversy he was ever involved in. If we can look past the fantastical nature of the Chronovisor, all things considered, Ernetti actually seems to fit the bill for being involved in the development of such a device, especially one based on reading waves. But believe it or not, you might start to believe it, because this priest also earned a university degree in quantum and subatomic physics. And if all that wasn't enough, Ernetti's favorite hobby was tinkering with experimental electronics in his monastic cell whenever he found time off from what we can assume was an enormously packed schedule. As Father Brun recounted in his book, quote, "The electronics experiments of Father Ernetti fascinated me. I returned to Venice several times. Several times I boarded the same small vaporetto, and again I knocked upon that small door, very discreet, of the monastery of San Giorgio Maggiore. We have again discussed for hours of the Chronovisor." End quote. It was during these later visits that Brun received the revelation. Father Ernetti finally divulged to his friend his most precious secret, that several years prior, in the mid-1950s, he was involved in the development and testing of a device that teetered between revolutionary scientific achievement and mystical artifact. The Chronovisor was his code name, and now we're really getting into the beating heart of the mystery.
You put them out yesterday and they got washed.
Well, they're not in your basket.
Ernetti explained to Brun that the Chronovisor was a result of a secret project commissioned by the Vatican. Over the course of several years, a team of 12 hand-picked scientists developed and engineered it. The Chronovisor team included Ernetti himself, as well as Enrico Fermi, the winner of the 1938 Nobel Prize in Physics, and Werner von Braun, the ex-Nazi engineer whose later work for the U.S. space program landed Americans on the moon. Ultimately, this dream team was successful in creating a functional time machine. Father Braun could see that Ernetti was absolutely serious, despite the nature of his claims. According to Ernetti, quote, "The chronovisor functioned by processing residual electromagnetic radiation left over by numerous processes." End quote. Like how a television picks up broadcasted signals, the chronovisor was engineered to pick up on these radiation waves, switch between them as desired, and decode the information contained within to produce audio and visuals of the event. Aching to know more, Braun asked Ernetti to give him an idea of the structure of this machine. Ernetti responded, quote, "It consisted of 3 elements. The first block included a multitude of antennas suitable for capturing all conceivable wavelengths. These antennas were made of alloys that included all metals, and they were interconnected. The second block was a selector that operated at the speed of light. It could be set in a sort of closed circuit on the location, date, and person of our choice. By virtue of this, the device then followed them everywhere. Finally, the third part was simply made up of a viewing device that allowed us to record the images and sounds obtained." End quote. In terms of physical appearance, the chronovisor might be described as a large cabinet decorated with cathodes, dials, levers, and antennas. It also had a large cathode ray tube on its front hooked up to a screen. So altogether, the chronovisor pretty much resembled a television, a very strange television. But unlike conventional TV sets, where viewers might tune into the History Channel, the chronovisor tuned into history itself. A set of directional dials allowed the user to specify what era and location they wished to see, and on the small screen, the viewer could witness events that unfolded years or even centuries ago, giving them unquestionable insight into the mysteries of the past. And just in case the scene wasn't firmly ingrained in the viewer's mind, the chronovisor was equipped with a built-in recording device replay. In Father Braun's book, The Vatican's New Mystery, he presents a transcript of an early conversation he had with Ernetti, questioning the Italian priest about what it was like using the chronovisor and what exactly he saw through it.
That's the question.
"What were you capturing? Sound? Images?" "Yes, it wasn't like a movie, but like a hologram, 3-dimensional in relief. The characters were not very large, roughly the size of our TV screens." "Was it in color?" "No, in black and white, but with motion and sound. Today, however, color would certainly be possible. Could you choose what you wanted to capture, or did the device work somewhat randomly?" "No, we could actually adjust our device to the desired place and era. More precisely, we chose someone we wanted to follow. It was on him that we set the device, and so it followed him automatically, a bit like ornithologists who tag wild geese or storks to better study the movements and possibly to protect them." "So the images you obtained were what he had seen? The captured scenes were observed from his point of view?" "No, of course. It's him that we were seeing. Each man possesses a kind of wave, a sort of emanation that is unique to him, somewhat like a signature or like fingerprints. So it's someone that we see and continue to see in all his movements. It's always him at the center of the scene. The problem consisted primarily in finding him by trial and error. Then the device was adjusted to the wave that emanated from him, and the device followed him automatically. So what did you see in this way then? First, we wanted to verify that what we were seeing was authentic. So we started with a relatively recent scene, for which we had good visual and sound documented. We adjusted the device to Mussolini, delivering one of his speeches. Then we went back in time, capturing Napoleon. Afterward, we went to ancient Rome, a scene from the Trajan's Fruit and Vegetable
Isn't
Market,
it?
a speech by Marcus Tullius Cicero. The gesture, the intonation, it was all there. What vigor, what flights of oratory. Lastly, we lingered on a minor work, a type of ancient tragedy that was practically lost. It was known only through a few quotations by various ancient authors. Fiestas, that is the name of this minor work, was staged in Rome in 169 BC, shortly before the author Quintus Onios's death. But tell me, Father, when you proposed that I come to visit, it wasn't just to talk to me about Quintus Onios. You also spoke to me about the life of Christ. Did you really manage to go back to the life of Christ? Yes, of course. And then? First of all, we tried to capture the passion, Christ on the cross, but it was not so easy. At that time, there were several crucifixions. We thought that we could still find him easily, thanks to the crown of thorns. Unfortunately, we had a surprise. The crown of thorns was not as unique as we thought. We then tried to go back to the Last Supper. It worked. And from that moment, we never left him. These scenes were captured between January 12th and 14th, 1956. We saw everything. The agony in the Garden of Gethsemane, the betrayal of Judas, the trial. We saw the ascent to Calvary, the way of the cross. However, medieval piety has somewhat distorted it, adding episodes. And Christ never fell. Moreover, he did not carry the whole cross. It would have certainly been too heavy. He carried only the horizontal beam tied to his shoulders. He was very disfigured. The scourging had torn strips of flesh from him. You could see down to the bone. But since Roman law required that the condemned must arrive alive at the place of his execution, the soldiers summoned Simon of Cyrene. We saw the scene as it is reported in the Gospel. But even there, piety has sometimes interpreted it a bit. We used to read beautiful texts in which we were encouraged to envy the role of Simon of Cyrene and to offer ourselves, like him, inwardly, to help Christ carry his cross. We clearly saw that Simon had no such desire. He had to be forced. Arriving at Calvary, Christ observes
Hey,
all
I
those
thought I said
around
hello.
him who insult him. Such majesty emanates from his whole being that everyone steps back, jostles, and falls to the ground. Jews, Greeks, Romans. Only Mary, the mother of Christ, John, and the other two Marys remain standing. I do not believe that Christ died of suffocation, as many doctors think. We saw him always standing upright until the last moment. And the resurrection, did you see that too? Yes, it's very difficult to describe. It was like a silhouette, a shape through a thin alabaster lamella lit up, or as through a crystal. Gradually, we then saw the rest of Christ's life, his appearances after his resurrection. Is there any trace left of all this? Yes, we filmed everything. This allowed us to show it later to Pope Pius XII, the President of the Republic, the Minister of Public Education. Members of the Pontifical Academy were also present. And now, what has become of this device? Dismantled, but in a safe place. Moreover, I have deposited the designs with a notary in Switzerland and others in Japan. Naturally, there is also a copy in Rome. But why? Why hide such a discovery, capable of shaking the world, of awakening faith that is being lost a little bit everywhere? This device can capture the entire past of anyone, completely, without exception. There are no more state secrets, no scientific, industrial, commercial, diplomatic secrets. There is no more private life. One day we caught a group of bandits preparing a robbery. We alerted the police, who were able to intervene in time. But the robbery was about to happen. Our device had not lied. It's a disruption, as you say, but so total that it scares some people. And it opens the door to the most terrifying dictatorship the earth has ever known. In the end, we all agreed to dismantle the Chronovisor. End quote. Father Brune couldn't shake the sense of awe and unease enveloping him. The Chronovisor, if real and as Ernetti described it, was staggeringly powerful. It was difficult to comprehend these sheer possibilities. Cool. But how did you discover something so extraordinary? practically by chance, a very simple idea, a bit like Columbus's egg. You just had to think of it. But then someday someone else will discover it too. No, it's practically impossible. It would take an unheard of stroke of luck. End quote. Seeing the flabbergasted look on Father Brune's face, Father Ernetti realized that some explaining was in order. The moment was ripe to dial back the timeline once more to the official commissioning of the Chronovisor project. How exactly a Benedictine monk ended up building a time machine in the company of some of the most brilliant scientists to ever live on a secret mission for the Vatican. At the alleged time of its construction, the Vatican did have a motive to develop such a device. Since World War II, the Roman Catholic Church had faced a sharp decline in global faith. Indeed, that situation would quickly change if biblical history could be witnessed and proven definitively. Pope Pius XII, who served from 1939 to 1958, hadn't forgotten about the recording machine incident with Father Ernetti and Gemelli that occurred in 1952. At some point later that same year, Ernetti's initial ideas for the Chronovisor reached the ears of the Pope. Allegedly, Pope Pius XII expressed overwhelmingly strong interest and offered Ernetti the funds to build it, on the condition that the priest was able to gather a team capable of such a feat. And this would obviously be a clandestine operation. It was up to Ernetti alone to identify, attract, vet, and recruit each candidate in secret. Thankfully, the Pope had the power to make this task a bit easier on the priest. Following the offer, Ernetti was appointed as the first chair of pre-polyphonic music at the Benedetto Marcello State Conservatory. More or less overnight, the priest gained access to some of the most brilliant scientists across a multitude of countries. This was how Ernetti managed to gather a secret league of 12 world-renowned experts in physics and engineering. Commissioned by the Vatican and with direct support from the Pope, their singular purpose was to break through the terrestrial shackles of time and space and invent a device capable of the waves of history and displaying it on a screen. The details from here become quite murky. Out of the dozen that purportedly invented the Chronovisor, Father Ernetti revealed only 5 of his colleagues' identities. First, the Nobel Prize winner Enrico Fermi. Second, one of Fermi's disciples, unnamed. Third, a Portuguese physicist, Professor de Matheus. Fourth, a Japanese Nobel Prize winner, unnamed. And fifth, the infamous ex-Nazi engineer, Werner von Braun. In his life, the only 3 names Ernetti ever gave were Fermi, von Braun, and de Matheus. Enrico Fermi, a Nobel Prize laureate in physics, was celebrated for his groundbreaking work in nuclear reactions and the discovery of radioactive elements. He was one of the designers of the first atomic bomb. You may also recognize the last name from the Fermi paradox, named after the prolific physicist. The Fermi paradox asks the simple question, if we aren't alone in the universe, where is everyone else? Which has never been definitively answered. The second participant mentioned, Werner von Braun, was a former Nazi SS member turned esteemed NASA rocket scientist after World War II, known widely as the father of space travel and the father of rocket science. Werner von Braun's reputation was just as formidable as Enrico Fermi's. Von Braun was instrumental in launching the United States' first space satellite, Explorer 1, and the Apollo spacecraft that reached the moon. It's also worth noting that conspiracy theorists have long suspected that during the final years of World War II, von Braun had been working on the Third Reich's Die Glocke, or Nazi bell, which some sources claim was an early form of a saucer-type UFO, the first ever built on terrestrial soil. Others claim that it was an anti-gravity weapon. And of course, there are many occult researchers that insist that Die Glocke was a time machine, or even all 3 in one. So if anyone were to invent a chronovisor, Fermi and von Braun would be ideal candidates. However, neither of them could authenticate the invention or its inner workings because their names only became publicly associated with the project in 1992, decades after their death. And notably, if the chronovisor's development began in 1952, Fermi passed away just 2 years into the project. Moving on, Ernetti never gave the full name of the Portuguese physicist known as Professor de Matos. The only information we know about de Matos is found in an interview with Ernetti from May 2nd, 1972. Quote, "In 1957, I was called by the Cheney Foundation to organize a center of liturgical music with specialized courses and training in pre-polyphonic music. It was during these courses that I met Professor de Matos from Portugal, who had done careful studies on the texts of Aristoxenos regarding the disintegration of the sound." End quote. Lastly, Ernetti described one of the participants as a Japanese Nobel Prize winner. He may have not provided their name, but there's only one person it could possibly be, given that the chronovisor was said to have been developed in the 1950s. That would be the Japanese theoretical physicist and first Japanese Nobel laureate, Hideki Yukawa, who won the award in 1949, according to the official citation, for his prediction of the existence of mesons on the basis of theoretical work on nuclear physics. The next Japanese winner of the Nobel Prize wouldn't be until 1965, so it would have to be Yukawa. Yukawa's background in understanding fundamental interactions at the particle level would have been pretty useful in theorizing or modeling aspects of how the chronovisor might select and tune to specific electromagnetic signatures associated with historical events or individuals. Actually, this team is starting to sound surprisingly suitable for the job. Ernetti with his mastery of sound and acoustics, Fermi with his theoretical and nuclear expertise, von Braun with his engineering skills, and Yukawa with his knowledge in particle physics. And not to forget de Matos, an apparently impressive scholar of ancient Greek acoustic physics. De Matos could have contributed understanding of how sound waves travel and persist over time. But no matter how many geniuses you can fit in a laboratory, the project still needs to be possible. The problem with most time machines is that they're considered physically impossible, as traveling back in time creates temporal paradoxes and logical contradictions. But here's the kicker. One thing to keep in mind is that the chronovisor isn't a traditional time machine. It only views the past and doesn't travel physically to the past, which helps avoid many of the classic paradoxes.
I don't think they've got anything that physically goes to the past. I think things like this, but I don't think you can do it in the physical form.
Associated with time travel, such as altering past events. It would still require at least several revolutionary advances in physics and engineering, and sensors far beyond our current capabilities. It would challenge the known laws of physics to an extreme degree. But technically, as far as I understand, it doesn't violate the known laws of physics. The only caveat is that there'd need to be a small delay when viewing events with the chronovisor, because a real-time transmission of information traveling faster than the speed of light would violate the principle of causality. Obviously, I'm having a bit of fun here, but with the dream team on point and the physical laws challenged but not broken, and a devout Catholic possibly opening a door for divine intervention, maybe the invention of time television isn't so crazy at all. If you know your physics, please leave your peer review in the comments. And for everyone else, that's enough physics for today. It's time to travel back to the story. Having heard all this, as Brun left Ernetti's quarters, he felt shook to the core and utterly bewildered. Though he didn't doubt the sincerity of his friend, this was a story wilder than he could wrap his head around. Thus, Brun would make many more visits over the coming months to fully grasp the story, the technology, and the implications. Everything had been dismantled, confiscated, or destroyed, so Ernetti couldn't provide Brun any evidence. These were the initial years of the chronovisor story. Life moved on and Father Brun returned to France. However, his continued faith in the story seemed to give Father Ernetti more confidence to begin speaking about the machine to others, and eventually even go public. This, unfortunately, would open a floodgate that Ernetti would never be able to close. It would take some time before Brun would be pulled back into the loop and realize that there was much more to Father Ernetti and his claims than what he was told, and things he'd never been shown. evidence that the monk would later present to prove the chronovisor's existence. Many years after meeting Brune, Ernetti made a controversial decision, and one he would certainly regret. He began to speak about the chronovisor at public and academic conferences. One of the best-known occasions of this was on February 17th, 1979, at a conference held in the San Tommaso University in Rome. There, Father Ernetti...
Serious flooding in Mecca. That's good news. I'm pretty sure, didn't the Sahara or something have snow this year? Which, as you can imagine, in the desert was very, very hard to do. But I'm pretty sure it snowed somewhere in one of them places that you wouldn't expect it to snow.
He lectured in front of an audience of scientists on the physical principle that explains the phenomenon of the voice.
Yeah, I believe Montauk Vast. I don't believe it's a physical transformation. I reckon it's advanced remote viewing or something like that.
Of the afterlife and the chronovisor. On this occasion, the monk spoke freely and frankly about the scientific workings of the device, with the same claims he'd made to Father Brune 15 years earlier. He explained to his audience and journalists that the chronovisor had been dismantled, hence why he wasn't able to show it. The problem was that the public was not as accepting of Ernetti's claims as Brune had been, and quickly, enormous amounts of pressure began to mount for the monk to provide some form of tangible evidence. And so eventually, he did. The most famous evidence Ernetti produced was supposedly a genuine photograph of Jesus Christ. According to Ernetti, on January 12, 1956, the chronovisor team ventured to the year 36 AD, the event of Christ's crucifixion, and returned with a complete recording of it, captured by the chronovisor. Later, in 1972, a named Vincenzo Maddaloni had heard the rumors of the chronovisor that had slowly began circulating around Venice and Vatican City. Maddaloni was perhaps the first to seriously begin pestering Father Ernetti for some form of evidence. After some time, the priest finally gave in and handed the journalist a photograph supposedly taken from the chronovisor's recording of Jesus' crucifixion. On May 2nd, 1972, an article titled "A Machine That Photographs the Past Has Finally Been Invented" was published by the newspaper La Domenica del Corriere. In a single day, almost all of Italy was buzzing over Father Ernetti's fantastical and very shocking claims. The press had talked about the chronovisor before, but this was the moment that the public at large first learned of it. The alleged photograph of Jesus Christ made the story a global sensation. Moreover, according to the article's author, Vincenzo Maddaloni, Father Ernetti also claimed to possess a photo of the Last Supper, which he kept private. The Last Supper photo would never be released, but the Jesus photo would become by far the most infamous image associated with the chronovisor mystery. For example, I have a 40 Times magazine that features it on the cover, with Pope John Paul II setting it on fire. To put it simply, this photo was problematic, but it wasn't until several years later that serious allegations regarding its authenticity. In 1980, a journalist from the magazine Giornale di Milano published the following, quote, "I do not personally know Father Ernetti, and therefore I cannot afford to judge his person. On the facts, however, I can express an opinion. To this day, regarding his machine that photographs the past, we only have a large amount of 'it is said' without any concrete evidence. The only fact officially disclosed in the press and endorsed by him as concrete proof turned out to be a colossal falsehood. I am referring to the image of the face of Christ that Father Ernetti delivered to some journalists, claiming that he had obtained it through his machine. Upon examination, this photo proved to be nothing more than the inverted reproduction of a devotional image that is sold for 100 lire at the sanctuary of the Amore Misericordioso di Collevalenza, itself a reproduction of a wooden sculpture by Culotte Valera, found in this sanctuary." End quote. The magazine presented a thorough documentation that proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that Ernetti's photo of Jesus was nothing more than a reversed image of a wood carving by the sculptor Lorenzo Culot Valera, found on a local postcard. Unfortunately, Father Ernetti was unwilling or unable to provide an explanation for this. When side-by-side images of both began to turn up in magazines, this cast serious doubt upon Ernetti's claims of the Chronovisor. Of course, when Father Brune learned of this, it shook him to the core. Quote, "That day, I discovered that Father Ernetti, who had told me that he did not even have a photograph to show me, had given a journalist a photo of Christ on the cross obtained through the Chronovisor. But the most serious fact is that there was an absolutely identical photo on a postcard. The same image, simply reversed from right to left. Same angle with the same lighting.
Guys, I'm
All
having
this,
trouble.
Father
Hang on.
Ernetti had not mentioned any to me. However, after my initial shock had passed, I said to myself, no, it's not possible. This man was not lying. No, there was only one solution, to visit Father Ernetti. Our relationship was
Wow.
not of the same kind as that which journalists or even
Guys, I got off for a couple of seconds to check something out, and I had trouble getting back.
his fellow scientists could have. He would have certainly told me what he could not tell others, at least a small part, what was necessary to not compromise our friendship. Honestly, I don't remember very well how I approached the matter, whether I was very direct, at the risk of seeming aggressive, or if I managed not to give him the impression that I was starting to doubt him. In my notes, I find only his answers. End quote.
Yeah, the Scientologists, they believe in some sort of UFO. Oh, I don't know what they believe. Something about UFOs, and you sign up for a billion-year deal. I don't know what's going on with them, but I didn't like what I saw.
The two priests sat upon the high chairs in Father Ernetti's monastic cell. Ernetti looked at Brune and indeed gave him an explanation that he'd never disclosed to the journalists. And it was complicated. According to the monk, he was well aware of the image from the Collevalenza postcard. The crucifix pictured was the work of a Spanish sculptor who had chiseled every last minuscule detail according to the directions of a nun known as Mother Hope. Mother Hope was not your everyday nun, but one blessed with divine vision and a history of incredibly intense mystical experiences. Mother Hope was what's known in Catholicism as a stigmatist. This is a person who bears bodily wounds, scars, or pain mirroring the crucifixion wounds of Jesus Christ, those in the wrists and feet.
Guys, I'm not telling you lies. I get stigmata through my heels.
From the large iron nails that pinned Christ to the cross.
And you feel every nail hammered into you. You really do.
In the side, from being pierced by the lance of Longinus. On the forehead, from the crown of thorns. And on the back, from the scourging Jesus suffered at the pillar. However, not only did Mother Hope relive the events of the Passion of Christ in her flesh, but she also experienced traumatizing visions of them on a regular basis. It was from one of these divine scenes, seared into her memory, that Mother Hope directed the sculptor to carve the crucifix. So, simply put, Ernetti was claiming that the sculpture was an absolutely historically accurate depiction.
I was never here. That's what the Holy Ghost is for. He does all that, not the Scientologists.
And that the photo of it, featured on a local postcard, was more or less a true image of Christ. But this elaborate clarification still didn't explain the fact that the photograph Ernetti provided to the journalist was not from a recording made by the Chronovisor. Father Ernetti had an answer for this, though. Going back to 1972, the journalist Vincenzo Maddaloni had been pestering the monk for evidence so frequently that it became a real annoyance. Same as Ernetti had told Brune decades prior. He didn't have any photos or recordings from the machine left in his possession. But the journalist would not accept this answer. Eventually, Ernetti decided to give Maddaloni a bone to gnaw on so that he could finally be...
Yeah, it was a painting, yeah. It was a painting they turned into an actual... What can you say? It's an idol, I guess.
left in solitude. He handed him a reversed.
It's worshiping Jesus like the Catholics, like put him on the cross. That wouldn't bar you from getting that. That wouldn't hinder you getting to heaven. Do you think it would or not?
Photo of the Pope.
I got a cross around my neck, but it's just a cross. I don't wear the dead body. I don't like the dead body.
Card of Mother Hope's sculpture without explicitly saying whether it was from the Chronovisor. The only thing the monk told the journalist was, quote, "Here, the Christ we saw with the Chronovisor was like this," end quote.
I'll tell you what, something's wrong here because someone's not telling the truth here because they have the shroud here what is it, Shroud of Turin, and this would compete with the Shroud of Turin because it's an image of God. So if these two are Jesus, how come they don't look like each other? Do you know what I mean, guys?
After this exchange, Ernetti speculated that the journalist Maddaloni intentionally made it sound like the image was directly taken from the Chronovisor recording. And to the monk's credit, Ernetti never.
Bas, that's how I think too. My Christ has risen from the dead. It doesn't matter what's on the cross now. It's not him.
Claimed to anyone else that the image was from the Chronovisor. However, he also never responded to the accusations of.
And here's one for you. Is it blasphemy to do this Chronovision? Because I will say God does say, "Thou shalt not be observers of time." So he doesn't like time looking. So I wonder what goes on there.
Fraud. The media completely destroyed his image and legacy over this. If Ernetti had answers, why wouldn't he at least try to protect all that he'd earned over so many decades of honest work and devotion? Brune questioned the monk on this apparent logical contradiction. Quote, "Then why this silence? Why haven't you at least responded to all those who are asking for an explanation from you? I was not free. I had already spoken too much. I had an absolute prohibition from my superiors to give new explanations, to respond to accusations, to reassert the existence of the Chronovisor and the reality of the results obtained. In a way, the accusations against me were convenient for them. Since I could not respond, the discredit gradually discouraged any kind of curiosity. This is precisely what they wanted from the time it was decided to dismantle the device and keep it a secret." End quote. Interestingly, Ernetti seemed to be implying that he was formally silenced shortly before the fraud accusations started. And
he don't seem to be saying that. He's saying exactly that.
This is consistent with other events in the timeline. Remember that the first expose that confirmed the Jesus photo as fake was in 1980. Just 1 year earlier, in February 1979, during the physics conference in Rome, Father Ernetti was still speaking freely and openly about the Chronovisor. He devoted his entire presentation at the conference to the Chronovisor's scientific function and the physics behind time tuning and time viewing. Unsurprisingly, it was tremendously popular and drew crowds of attendees. Many reporters and columnists in the audience went on to publish reactions to it.
I got to admit, if I was in a hall somewhere and they were doing this, I would go and watch it.
This was a defining moment in Ernetti's career, and likely the very event that prompted the Vatican to formally silence him. Because after this, he suddenly stopped talking about it to anyone. Brune suspected that Ernetti was immediately forbidden from discussing the device, either due to the storm of reactions it stirred up, or possibly something Ernetti let slip that he wasn't supposed to reveal. Either way, Brune discovered in his research that,
interesting I was.
After the Rome conference in 1979, there were long years of silence. Later, in October of 1979, when Ernetti was invited to a parapsychology congress, everyone expected some information on the Chronovisor. Instead, he had prepared a 3-hour conference on the eschatology in the Bible, philosophy, and theology. 3 hours, without a doubt, so that there was no time to ask him questions about the Chronovisor. Then, during a congress organized by the astrology magazine Astra on October 18th and 19th, 1986, in Riva del Garda, the title of Father Ernetti's lecture was Theology, Science, and Magic. On that occasion, he spoke again about the chronovisor, but it was only one of the topics evoked. Journalists who attended highlighted the extreme caution with which Father Ernetti had mentioned the chronovisor without ever exposing himself, without ever suggesting that he could have played an important role in his research. Had he obtained permission from his superiors to talk about it, and within precise limits, that's what he had reported to my friend,
Good night, Phil. God
Professor
bless, mate.
Ernst Sinkowski, on February 14th, 1987. What he, Father Ernetti, had said on the shores of Lake Garda at that Congress had been directly authorized by the Vatican. End quote. The photograph of Jesus Christ was not the only evidence that Ernetti revealed to the world before his apparent silencing. This other piece of evidence actually came first, but more importantly, is the only evidence for the chronovisor that remains academically contested to this day. I'm referring to the same text that the monk had mentioned to Father Brune during their initial meetings, his handwritten transcription of the long-lost tragedy Thyestes, composed by the Roman poet Quintus Onios in 169 BC. The play is believed to tell the story about how Thyestes attended a banquet and was tricked by his brother Atreus into eating his own children. Despite Quintus Onios' fame and success as a playwright and poet, only fragments of his work have survived. The only reason why we know Thyestes existed is through the writings of ancient authors, whose various records preserved a total of 24 lines. So far as we know, the rest of the tragedy has been lost. According to the monk, his handwritten transcript of Thyestes was a product of their earlier tests with the chronovisor. Near the tail end of 1955, Ernetti and his team had only recently completed the device and were testing it by traveling progressively further back in time. First, they visited a speech given by the Italian dictator Benito Mussolini so they could compare it to an actual recording and confirm whether the chronovisor was working. Next, they traveled 100 years back to a
Wow.
speech given by Napoleon Bonaparte.
Come on, not bad.
Finally, they tuned their time television all the way back to ancient Rome, 169 BC. There, the chronovisor team witnessed an ancient tragedy being performed on stage. As an expert in Latin, Father Ernetti quickly recognized it as Thyestes, the long-lost play, and began transcribing the dialogue by hand. In 1966, a decade after these alleged events, and 2 years after Father Brune met Ernetti, a Latin scholar by the name of Professor Giuseppe Marosca took an interest in Father Ernetti after reading about him in a magazine. Marosca got in contact, and the two swiftly bonded over their mutual love for the ancient language and Roman arts and culture. Just like Brune, Professor Marosca made enough subsequent trips to Ernetti's monastery that eventually he too would become privy to the chronovisor. Ernetti only spoke to Father Brune about his Thyestes transcript, never showing it to him. However, Professor Marosca was very insistent, as this ancient play was directly related to his field of study. The chronovisor was fascinating, sure, but getting a copy of that Thyestes transcript became an unhealthy obsession. Tired of the professor's continuous requests, Father Ernetti finally gave in. During one of their hangouts in the monk's monastic cell, Ernetti handed Marosca a box containing a bundle of papers tied together with a string, giving Marosca no context as to what it was. According to later newspaper reports, after Marosca went home, he untied the bundle, shuffled through a couple pages, and saw that there were Latin words. Immediately, he put the bundle back into the box, then secured his new treasure in a massive metal strongbox in his bedroom, locking it shut. For several years after, Professor Marosca kept the Thyestes transcript absolutely secret. But eventually he decided that this important work needed to be shared with the world. With Ernetti's permission, the professor gave a copy to a local Italian magazine, who then published it to far less fanfare than the Jesus photo that would come later. The article read, quote, "For 5 years, Marosca jealously retained the sheets in a box without deciding to make something about it. Finally, he made a decision And after having made the translation into Italian and obtaining the consent of Father Ernetti, allowed our magazine to publish only some of the passages. End quote. One of the standout issues presented by the Thesis transcription is that it's largely incomplete, just as the magazine mentioned, as Marosca and Ernetti only allowed a select few passages to be published, a total of 121 lines. Realistically, the full play would have been about 10 times longer. This is a point that many Chronovisor critics overlook, the fact that the transcript was initially presented as a fragment, nowhere near the complete work. So we can't be too judgmental on the lackluster length. That said, the actual contents need to be peeled through with a fine-tooth comb. While the Thesis transcript was initially overlooked, after the crushing wave of accusations spurred from the Jesus photo expose, the world became determined to debunk any further evidence of the Chronovisor and prove that it was all the concoctions of the mad priest, the nickname Ernetti became known by. So, in the year 2000, a Princeton University graduate named Dr. Catherine Owen Eldred, who holds a PhD in classical literature, translated Ernetti's Thesis text into English and gave her thorough analysis on the matter. If you'd like to read the Thesis transcript yourself, Dr. Eldred's work was published in the American edition of Peter Cross's book, Father Ernetti's Chronovisor, The Creation and Disappearance of the World's First Time Machine. The contents are in the form of hymns or prayers to the god Apollo, sung by Theistus. As mentioned before, Theistus accidentally ate his own children at a banquet after his brother Atreus killed and cooked them for dinner. Now, trying to appeal for Apollo for help, Theistus spends most of the transcript singing praise about Apollo's attributes and retelling the story of the god's birth. After a long while, Theistus comes to realize that Apollo isn't listening. The group of friends around Theistus then beg Apollo to listen, but Apollo refuses.
Yeah.
Out of options, Theistus curses Atreus angrily. Quote, "May Atreus perish in a shipwreck. May he fixed on the..."
Diane, I saw how they done that Charlie bit before it happened and everyone was aware of it. Apparently, and it's a good apparently, Trump's a member of some big high organisation that makes him MAGA, I'm guessing. And that's how they know. Whoever's got control of Trump, they're the same ones doing what happened to Charlie Clerk.
Highest, sharpest rocks, disemboweled, suspended over a vast expanse, sprinkling the rocks with gory disease.
They don't actually work this out themselves. They get told to do it.
And black blood. May he have no grave, no haven for his body, where his body may rest from evils, when his human life had been lost. And indeed, may Apollo not be beside him, and a cause for destruction be nearby. End quote. There are several reasons why Dr. Eldred suspected that.
Yeah, Talia, look up predictions from The Simpsons. Look it up. It's pretty stunning.
That Ernetti's transcript was not the real Theistus. She pointed out that the text contained words that didn't appear in the Latin language until centuries after the play was first performed. Also, the repetition of words suggests that whoever wrote it had a limited understanding of Latin. Obviously, Latin was the playwright Quintus Annius' native language, and he was known as a masterful writer, so repetitive vocabulary is rather suspicious. Finally, Dr. Eldred actually complimented the Thesis transcript, despite her confidence in its fraudulence. She stated that overall, quote, "Some of it is quite good, some of it is okay, and none of it is bad. It definitely has literary distinction," end quote. All this said, there are some surprisingly scathing critiques of Dr. Eldred's critique itself. Father Brune, who we know is also a scholar of ancient languages, including Latin, denounced the Princeton graduate's translation as not good, citing numerous errors. Quote, "Two huge errors right from the first two lines, and moreover, verses. It's not insignificant. I will add that it is always wise to be very cautious in the use of such analysis based on vocabulary. To resort to such an argument One must not choose the wrong word. Each error leads to another. Frankly, one has to wonder if this graduate of Princeton University has any knowledge of Latin grammar. The most amusing part is then seeing her comments. She believes she's analyzing the text, but is merely glossing over her own misinterpretations, marveling, for example, that the author speaks of madness, and even praising this madness. I see the madness in her translation, not in the text. Professor Maraska does not seem to have been troubled by the style or vocabulary of the text. However, he knew Latin, end quote. So apparently Ernetti's transcript of Theestus is still up for debate. It's dubious and suspicious, especially in light of the fake Jesus photo. But this text remains the only potential evidence of the chronovisor still left on the table. Obviously, that's a big issue. Beyond the Theestus transcript, the only remaining support for the existence of the chronovisor are the testimonies of Ernetti's colleagues, all of whom are esteemed and respectable individuals by most measures, but none of whom ever actually saw the time television itself, besides Father Ernetti.
I think it's only ice cream.
Huh?
Okay.
On April 8th, 1994,
What
at
sort
the
of
age
ice
of
cream?
68, Father Pellegrino Ernetti passed away.
Normal ice cream.
But after
Grapes,
his death,
they got
the
'em, and
chronovisor
mint
mystery would be stirred back to life in an utterly strange twist. In the year 2000, the editors of Peter Cross's book, Father Ernetti's Chronovisor, were contacted by an individual claiming to be a distant relative and a spiritual son of Ernetti, someone who was very close to the monk. This relative lived in Italy and had heard about the research for the book and wanted to offer the editors a document pertaining to Ernetti, which he considered important, but only with the formal guarantee of absolute anonymity.
Soybean.
He stipulated that we were not to reveal his name, nor anything about him, apart from what was in the document. We agreed.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The document arrived in our Florida offices a month later. In what follows, we are reprinting that document in its entirety. We've made efforts to determine the authenticity of this document and of its contents. We're not at liberty to say what paths we pursued in doing so, but we have reason to believe that the document is authentic, end quote. Written originally in Italian, yet only published by the editors in its English translation, this provocative document claimed to be the record of a confession made by the late Father Ernetti on his deathbed. According to this mysterious source, his father was a distant relative of Father Ernetti and had great respect.
Oh, isn't that whoever's the boss of who runs The Simpsons? It used to be Fox. I don't know who it is now, but whoever does The Simpsons, they probably got, I'm not exaggerating, probably about 15 ones that I can remember. If you asked me to tell you, I couldn't do it. But I remember they've done, I've seen videos of them with so much exposition of the type that, yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Admiration for the monk. Since early childhood, his father brought him on regular.
So they already knew how to do it. So they're not being psychic or anything. The guys who run The Simpsons, they're the ones doing it. Because think about it, if The Simpsons were getting away with this and they didn't want them to, they would get rid of that show. They would ban that show.
Visits.
But they let them keep doing it.
To Ernetti's monastery, and as a child, he referred to the monk as Uncle Pellegrino. They enjoyed a very close and friendly relationship over several decades, even after the relative married and moved some distance away. The document read as follows, quote, "One night, a number of weeks before Father Ernetti died, I don't want to say when, I received a telephone call from him. His voice was low and quavering. That was when he told me he was dying. He asked if I could come and see him the next day. He told me it might be the last chance he would ever have to see me. I immediately went to Venice, very distressed. When I entered Uncle Pellegrino's cell, something seemed to be very changed about the atmosphere. Uncle lay very still in his bed. It seemed like him, but in a way not quite like.
Talia, I think we're just about to hit tribulation. I think we might be at tribulation by Christmas. Either way, It's going to be a bad Christmas for everyone, I think.
He called my name. I sat down beside his bed. He told me that the night before, he had thought he was going to die. He had become very ill and had lost consciousness. End quote. The letter goes on to detail that Ernetti had a near-death experience where he saw a white light and began walking toward it. In the distance, he was being beckoned onward by a figure he vaguely recognized. The following morning, when he'd regained consciousness, Ernetti realized that he had been in heaven. He felt incredibly weak. He didn't understand why he was still alive. Quote, he said that he had not told the nuns or the doctors about this. Instead, he had telephoned me. He realized that he had been told during his near-death experience, and he remembered this when he woke up. Some things about himself which he had forgotten for a very long time. They mostly had to do with this life, but during this experience, he had also been told about a number of his other lifetimes, and that had opened his eyes to many things. Uncle Ernetti told me, "My son, I am very, very fond of you. Sometimes I have presumed to think of you as my own son. I will not live much longer. I may even die tonight. Over the years, I have told you many lies. I wish now to rectify that. I wish to tell you the truth." And
wow, how's he going to do that?
Quote, Father Ernetti pointed weakly toward the big wooden desk in his monastic cell and requested the relative to take a pencil and paper from one of the drawers and begin recording his words. He told his spiritual son that he could choose to do whatever he wanted with the information he was about to receive. First, the dying priest admitted that he'd forged the transcript of the ancient long-lost tragedy, Thyestes. However, things weren't so simple. The near-death experience Ernetti had the night before forced him to a strange realization that it was he alone, and not Quintus Anios, who composed the transcript, using fragments preserved in the works of ancient authors. Father Ernetti could only vaguely remember doing this. He admitted that Thyestes was a lifelong obsession of his, and that he finally understood why exactly that was. Ernetti then told his spiritual son something even more bizarre, that while he may have not witnessed Thyestes through the chronovisor, he did in fact witness the entire stage play in a previous lifetime. Quote, I was a boy who saw that play. There was one scene that was burned into my memory. I wanted to remember and relive the rest. I remember the scene at the table, the cannibalism. My father in that lifetime was very cruel. All during my present lifetime, I've told people that I want to hear the music that...
Okay, this is crap, because we know you only live one time. This is crap.
Accompanied Anios' Thyestes. But that was not true. I want you to know the truth. I said it to provide an explanation for an otherwise inexplicable obsession. End quote.
This guy preaches reincarnation. I'll just find something else to finish with.
The confession, it's not clear whether his fraudulent copy of Thyestes was forged out of obsession, or if he actually transcribed the scenes from his vivid past life memories. Either way, Ernetti confessed that the only reason he claimed that he used the chronovisor to obtain the text was because any other explanation would have been totally unbelievable. Interesting logic, but we'll roll with it. Finally, the dying priest decided that it was time to talk about the truth of the infamous device. As if to make sure his relative didn't get the wrong idea, he stated firmly, quote, I did manage to build the chronovisor, and once it almost worked, end quote. This is where things get truly interesting. According to the deathbed confession, the chronovisor was absolutely real. Moreover, it wasn't anything like how Ernetti had described it to anyone else prior. Writhing on his deathbed, Ernetti recounted a pivotal event to his spiritual son. Quote, it was a dark and gloomy day. I sat within it and turned it on. The chronovisor was not like a television at all, but rather was a sphere, much like a diving device or one-man submarine, open at eye level in all directions. It was suspended by a cable with a device that gave it free range of motion. It was made of a lightweight metal and aluminum alloy. After locking myself into it, the world spun around me. It was powered solely by thought energy. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw also spinning, a circular room lined with something resembling files. The machine slowed, but would not stop. I believe now that the functioning of the chronovisor is dependent upon a very specific belief structure. That very specific belief structure involves a certain separateness from time, a distancing from regulated, structured religions. But that was difficult for me because I was a priest. I count the failure of the machine as my own failure. End quote. The relative then asked the dying Ernetti how he was able to invent this time machine and who exactly collaborated with him on this endeavor. The answer was, of course, unexpected. Out of all the scientific geniuses Ernetti previously claimed had worked with him, he only mentioned one. Quote, I did know Enrico Fermi. He humored me, a very tolerant friend. I was alone in my belief. He did not work on the chronovisor with me. However, one person helped me, a student, not known to history. He is a priest now, and he will remain very silent. End quote. As improbable as it might seem for Father Ernetti and a student assistant to have invented something as profound as a chronovisor all on their own, according to the deathbed confession, this wasn't the full picture, because the history of the chronovisor and its development may very well stretch back hundreds of years. Clutching to his relative, Ernetti then made an incredible claim. Quote, this was not the first lifetime I devoted to my endeavor of...
And there we go. I'm not listening to the guys in the reincarnation. So I line something else up to finish with, guys. Yeah, I like this guy.
He's met up and asked FEMA for these funds specifically along the Cascade. Breaking developments out of the Pacific Northwest, U.S. officials are now pressing FEMA to get emergency funds into the Cascadia subduction zone as scientists warn the threat of a tsunami and a 9.0 quake. This is not a drill. This is real. Now, I want you to see this right here on the screen. You can see Jeff Merkley. He's asking for disaster mitigation funds to our Oregon Coast project. He's met up and asked FEMA for these funds specifically along the Cascadia zone for this tsunami threat. And he says, we urge you to honor FEMA's commitments. He says, remaining previously awarded grant funds, County Tsunami Earthquake Astoria Hospital Project. These funds are necessary for North Coast community to withstand elevated threat of natural disasters, including the anticipation of Cascadia subduction zone event and the tsunami that will follow. Now, this follows also just recently, we had a 7.8 quake just hit. This was off of Russia's coast. So these things right here that's happening seem to be aligned up. And when we see these quakes hit along these 7.8s, these close to 8.0s, we start to see things happen off the Cascadia subduction zone. So in the next few days, we're going to be watching all of that. Meanwhile, the Oregon governor, Tina.
Did you see that one, guys? 7.8. Wow. You don't get much bigger than that.
Kodak signed an executive order this same week talking about this 9.0. She wants to make sure that all buildings must survive 9.0 earthquakes. So we're going to talk about some of the zone shifting. We're going to talk about the ground land subsidence, press release widening. Bonamisi called for FEMA to release disaster mitigation funds for Oregon Coast projects. So they haven't got the funds just yet. And that's the thing now. We're going to be watching in to see if they even get the funds in time. So this is going to be a huge process as everything is already starting to break down. We did a video about Cascadia starting to have a breaking apart zone. And again, today, these tsunamis prompted just today after Russia 7.8. This prompted a lot of situations here where all the coastlines, they were assessing, okay, is this going to be a threat for us? But after that, they assessed and said, all right, we're all clear for today. But we need to watch this the next following days, weeks, and everything else is going to be following this along the ring of fire after these different earthquakes that's hitting deep off in the ocean. Now, the response to something that we're going to be looking at is very important. because most of the response situations is something that's being watched closely, because most of the government warning systems with the tsunami and the earthquakes sometimes are inoperable when these things start to occur. That's why we want to have this first line warning system right now to get you some information that's going to be very important along the West Coast. If this thing hits and when it hits, because they're not saying if in the language, they're saying that it's 100% certainty that we're going to see some earthquake hit off the Cascadia subduction zone.
Yeah, call this citrus.
So one of the areas we want to look at right now for you is along the whole entire West Coast. This is where land subsidence will happen at, meaning that, yes, the water, basically land will sink into the ground if this earthquake hit that's over a 9.0. So we also have to look at some facilities around the area that has chemicals in there. So we want to give you all this. So right now you need to subscribe, because we're going to be live time reporting on this situation, giving you all information. There should be no excuses why officials can't warn people, since scientists just came out and said, well, we got this real-time tsunami warning system on the world's fastest supercomputer. And so you can see right here where it's able to, in live time, and the gourd plate right there, the gourd ridge, if you're looking at that, is exactly where that big crack, that big rupture is happening. They went out there, and the Ocean Initiative, they went and seen this rupture right along that area. No excuses why warning systems shouldn't come out fast. So let's get into this right now with the land subsidence and the areas that will sink if this happens, so we can be prepared to mitigate this. In most of these zones, you should
That's not game, that's a cat.
if you're looking in this area. Now, here is the Cascadia earthquake could release deadly chemicals endangering much of Multnomah County. And we're going to go right here and show you on screen. If you look at this, you can see all along this area, it has about 1,100 industrial facilities. This is a major problem. So if you're looking at this right now along Portland, you can see up to Vancouver, you see all these areas where it's going to have the red zone at. You're going to need to be able to navigate that. That's going to be a first situation, because when ground rupture happens, when the earth starts shifting apart, that's when you really need to look at these counties, these zones. There's other areas right here that we're showing you, and some people asking the question, what is Multnomah County anyway? Multnomah County is the most populous county in Oregon, located in the northwestern part of the state where Columbia and Willamette rivers meet. It's the county seat in Portland, Oregon's largest city. So it's basically known for natural attractions and everything else. So let's read a little bit more. Let's read more about the Cascadia subduction zone. Jeff Merkley, the senator, just put in the disaster mitigation funds asking FEMA. This is what he said. He says, we urge you to honor FEMA's commitment. Whiting, in their letter.
I've seen it get mentioned. I haven't looked into it, Dad. But I do know about it.
DHS Secretary Kristen Nolan, FEMA Acting Administrator David Richardson. The new facility will combine solutions to two of the region's most pressing needs into one facility: critical access hospital and the infrastructure necessary to act as a vertical evacuation shelter in the event of an earthquake and tsunami. So they're looking at these evacuation shelters and stuff like that, stuff that they can have, that basically they can have people move into. For the most part, a lot of people here, would you trust those facilities? That's the big question. Let's see what you say in the comment section. I went through Hurricane Katrina, so I'm saying from my experience, we like to stick on our own and do our own thing, because you just never know. You probably could do better if you're paying attention to everything that's happening around you and keeping a watchful eye.
This breakthrough cooling device keeps families comfortable all summer, even during blackouts and heat emergencies. It's smaller than a lunchbox, cools any room within 3 minutes, and uses 98.7% less energy than your AC. It was invented by a former ASA engineer from Adelaide, and it's now taking Australia by storm. Steve designed this device after a citywide power outage left him, his wife, and elderly mother without AC in the searing summer heat. With inside temperatures reaching 33 degrees, Steve took matters into his own hands. The result is an ingenious invention that's destroying the $5 billion AC industry.
Now, the other area of what we're watching is the Diablo Canyon power plant off California, which makes no sense to put a power plant here. There's another concern. So once this is 7 feet, it's supposed to sink. Land subsidence along the area is supposed to hit 7 feet sinking. And Diablo Canyon will go straight into the ocean. That will be another nuclear plant that will cause a major situation. So again, the government is preparing for this. So we're just saying right now, we should be having to talk about the situation. We should be preparing ourselves as well, and not just believing that, oh, well, you know, everything that's being told right now is we're fine. We'll be totally all right. Well, the warning systems right now is us. The warning system is you. Between you and me and then the military, we see them planning off of the Washington West Coast with these new studies coming out. And with the timing lining up along September, all of these different stories that we're talking about here is lining up in September. So this tells me right now that yes, they are in a race and they are prepping, and they potentially know a little bit more than what they're letting off for right now. And so if you're here right now in your live, you're just tuning in, you're newly watching this channel, you need to make sure you stick with this channel because we're going to give you all a lot of top updates. You watch off the coast area. And again, if you want to be a part of that watch, it's 447@gmail.com. If you're watching off of the coastlines, because even on the East Coast, we're starting to have these strange noises that's starting to pop up. People are telling me from Michigan all the way down to Virginia, all the way up to New Jersey, all the way up to New York. That's being reported into that these sounds are happening off the coastlines. Over there, we looked at this new Atlantic threat where this rupture is opening up over there as well. Officials saying that they don't know what it is. USGS saying they don't know what it is. That's why we need to have lifetime cameras watching and just be able to tap into them, download them, and then bring them back here, send to my email, and I'll get it to everybody. Right now, you're a part of this community watch team. So we're going to have to keep watching each other's back. And I believe like this is going to be the way everything is going to work in the future. So yeah, like these funds, the question is over the next course of days, we're going to be checking in because if FEMA doesn't give these funds, it's just like this. The levee is about to break. It's a levee in an area in St. Louis that we've covered. They said they'll be.
What do you need me to read? What do you want me to read? My voice is a bit hoarse.
There once the levee break. And this was reported in by the state officials in St. Louis, Missouri area. They were saying that the Mississippi River is creating this water formulation where it's slowly eating away underneath the ground. And again, what will FEMA say about the West Coast? That's what we're going to be looking at because it's going to be very critical to the situation. Now, if you missed all of the other updates here, I'm going to drop this right now in the live chat because, and it should be recommended underneath here, Cascadia breaking apart in military.
Hey, what's the scripture you like?
So we're going to drop that right here in the live chat, and you'll see it also on the left-hand side of the screen. Drop your questions, drop your comments, any statements, anything that I missed here, because I want to make sure that I'm covering what you're telling me I need to cover so I can look into this. That's how I've actually been
my favorite book.
To everybody new coming in and everybody's already been here. So you don't want to miss this. You check here on the left-hand side and then you comment. I'm going to look at all that and make sure we can know exactly what's going on. And I'm going to be watching everything over these next course of days. So stay here, but watch the videos here because you don't want to be.
Wait, before you skip, you could be paying too much for your health insurance. Skipping this ad could cost you. Oh, you stayed. Thanks.
I thought I loaded that.
What's up, everybody? Tonight you are here on Now You See TV, and I am John Pounders. And tonight I'm going to be reading to you guys something that was sent to me and told. It is alarming and disturbing.
Okay, I'll read a part of the book of Revelation every day until I cover it. But here we go. Book of Revelation, the book of Jesus Christ. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to. Oh, my eyes aren't good. I can't even read these. It's too small a font.
I have no way to know if the person writing it.
I'll try again. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show his servants things which now must come shortly. Revelation. I'm not feeling this. Sorry. My voice is hoarse.
Is legitimate, but when I look at it and I read what it says, I've heard it before and I've heard it from many other people. And so I am going to read it because it is alarming and it has implications not just for me, but for you guys out there. Actually, anybody who is out there doing anything that is against the worldwide agenda of these covens. And so I'm going to read this and then I'm going to play.
Okay, I'm wearing my $30 glasses, which can make the pitch out. My prescription glasses couldn't do it. There we go, the revelation of Jesus Christ. Introduction and benediction. Revelation book 1, chapter 1. The revelation of Jesus Christ, which God gave him to show unto his servants things which must shortly take place. And he sent and signified by his angel to the servant John. 2. Who bore witness to the... I can't get the words going.
A clip.
I can't click. I'm just having problems doing this because I can hardly talk. I don't know why, but my voice is really, really hoarse today.
But
what I'm going to do now, I said I'll do this before, but I will. Every stream I do, I'll do a couple of chapters of the Bible. First, I'll start with Revelation, go through that, and then when it's done, I'll go back to the beginning of the New Testament or whatever. But, yeah.
Dizdar, one of his speeches, I don't know, 16, I'm going to say.
I was never here. Next time you come, if you catch the beginning, that's when I'll read the scriptures.
You're the Watchman. I could be wrong on those dates, but before he passed away, and he happened to say something that is very similar to what is being written in this letter. So hold your horses. I'm going to read this to you, and I'm going to read it to you kind of step by step here, just kind of read it. It's a 3-page long letter here. So I'm not going to tell you who it's from. In fact, they didn't tell me who they were. But so here we go. It says, Dear John, I hope this letter finds you.
Talia, I exposed something from the future a number of times in my Wizard of Oz decode. Did you ever watch it?
Well, though I'm not sure my words will leave you feeling the same. I've been meaning to write you for weeks, but something's been gnawing at me. I'm compelled to share it, not to scare you, but because you've always had a knack for seeing through the fog of things, and it might save your life. It's about these coven members, they call them, and their assignment is in every city. It's a story that makes you question the faces around you, and I warn you, this is not to be taken lightly. I shouldn't be telling you this because it could cost me greatly. A secret network, a group operating in every city, from the skyscraper canyons of Manhattan to the small towns like ours.
Guys, you know I read scripture before. I think I read the complete book of Acts, and that was pretty good, but I could make that out. The eyes are a little bit weaker now, so even the $30 ones aren't working as good.
They're old bloodline coven members. There's nothing witchy about them in the broomstick and cauldron kind of way that is visible. He said, these people blend in. They're your pharmacist, your kid's soccer coach, the lady who smiles at you at the grocery line, but they're not there by chance. They're assigned. And their targets, well, that's where
Thanks, I was. Yeah. I don't know why my voice is doing this, but it's really hoarse. Not much we can do about it.
it gets dark. There's a list, an assassination list. I can tell you who makes it. I can't tell you who makes it. The names on it are anyone who is a threat to their uprising. But once you're marked, a coven member is dispatched. They're tasked with becoming your friend, your confidant, the person you'd never suspect. They slip into your life like a shadow and feed information to whoever's holding the
Guys, this is over in 15 minutes. I'm going to sack it after that.
And then he tells me a story. He says, let me paint you a picture, because this is where it starts to crawl under my skin. He says, imagine a woman named Clara, a librarian with wired rimmed glasses and a laugh that makes you feel at home. Really sweet lady. She moves to a small city, let's say your city, and starts frequenting the same coffee shop as a guy named Tom. Tom's a pastor of a budding church. Clara bumps into him one day, spills her latte, and they get to talking. She's warm, funny, and remembers her favorite sports team. Soon, they're grabbing beers after work, texting about nothing, sharing stories over late-night pizza. Tom thinks he's made a friend, maybe even someone more. But Clara's not there by accident. She's a coven member, and Tom's name is on that list.
Oh.
Every detail she learns, his
Did he say? He must have said this is a true story.
work schedule, his sister's address, the fact that he sleepwalks when he's stressed gets passed along. To who? That's the question nobody answers. They know how to mirror your quirks, laugh at the right moments, ask questions that feel innocent but aren't. And they're patient too. They might spend months, years, decades building your trust. Clara might help Tom fix his leaky sink, show up at his mom's funeral, all while filing away every detail of his life. And the whole time, Tom's none the wiser, because who suspects their best friend of being what? A coven member? A spy? A cog in some invisible machine? Some targets never meet their end. They're just watched, controlled, kept in check. What makes my stomach turn is how widespread this is. Listen to this. Every city, John, even in your small town, think about that. In your little town with less than 1,000 people, there could be a dozen of them sipping coffee at the diner. Well, in my small town, there's no small coffee at the diner with a dozen people that's ever sitting at it. But I get the idea. Sipping coffee at the diner, chatting up the mayor at the farmer's market.
We've got a huge coffee culture here. All our sidewalks have got shops with food in it and a lot of coffee.
Or teaching a yoga at the community center. They're organized like a secret society with a hierarchy. At the top, there's someone or something calling the shots, deciding who's a threat and who's not. Below them, local handlers assign the operatives, give them their targets, names, maybe even a dossier with photos and habits. The coven members don't always know why they're watching someone. They're told it's for the greater good, and some have personalities they don't even know about. I haven't told anyone else, John, because I don't want to sound like I've lost it. But I know because I was in and I woke up. So do me a favor, keep your eyes open. If someone new slides into your life a little too smoothly, or has, ask yourself why. The time is coming soon to where they will act at once. P.S. Burn this letter when you're done. I don't know who might be watching. Well, there's like 1,000 of you watching right now, and he didn't give his name. So I wanted to bring it out there because in my mind, there's a chance that that's real. And I don't want to believe it's real, but I know that this kind of stuff goes on. David Carrico, I've been working with him for a long time. He's wrote about this stuff. He's witnessed to people that are in this thing. And so have I. I've talked to these people, documented that it's real. but this just hits close to home. It's a weird story that you think about, but you don't think about it being that widespread. And I assume that if they're tied in with other secret societies, it wouldn't be very hard for them to be in every city, because every secret society, at least around where I live, every town you go into, that's right there on the threshold of the town, tells you who runs the town. And so, yes, every city, even a small city with less than 1,000 people, has a secret society. And so, as much as I would like to believe that somebody was just writing me this and wanting to tell me a good story, I don't
know how true this is, but I did read it or hear from it somewhere. There's over 50,000 Masonic temples in America. From the way I remember that, it was true. Wherever I got that info, I was pretty convinced of.
But that's not the case. I know this kind of stuff actually happens. But I understand this, and I'm always thinking about this, and you guys, sometimes it can make you very paranoid. In the last year or so, I feel like I've chosen to forget a lot of this stuff on purpose, because I just wanted to operate without fear. I want to operate without fear of being betrayed, without fear of being killed, without fear of all of those things. And the only way to do that is just to do it. And so that's my mission right now. There's been years, though, actually, from like 2019, 2020, all the way to really last year, or just really the beginning of this year, I've been very guarded with that. And I've always been very suspicious of people who are around me, because I've become privy to this, and actually even had some of the people expose themselves who were a part of this, what this guy's saying, worldwide coven. I assumed it was a small coven acting on their own behalf, but I think that almost sounds naive now to think about. And in light of all of the weird stuff that happened with this whole Charlie Kirk thing, it doesn't surprise me. And, I believe that there was weird stuff going on with that. There's no way there wasn't. I mean, all the numbers that are surrounding it. It looked like, in the location, everything, it looked like a hit for a reason, like a hit to prove a point, or maybe even get somebody out of the way. I don't know. I'm not going to claim to understand it. I know there's a lot of people that have very strong opinions about it, and I don't want to make you mad, because ultimately it really doesn't even matter what happened exactly. It just matters that we all saw it happen and that they're using it. So ultimately, whatever you believe about it, when it comes to how big the conspiracy is, imagine big, and I'm sure it's bigger than that in many, many ways. So one of the things that I think all of you guys should take home with this is, if you are a person who is out there sharing the light of Christ, considered a threat to the system, get to know the people that have gotten to know you, and be very careful about that. I'm going to play a video by Russ Dizdar. This was at Hear the Watchman conference. I think Mike Kerr is the one that puts this conference on. And I had the pleasure of meeting Russ Dizdar before he passed at one of these conferences. I don't remember if it was at Hear the Watchman or not. I think it was a different one. But nonetheless, I had the opportunity to meet him. And this guy was in it. And a lot of people think he's, fake or whatever. But, this guy was in it. He was out there in the muck, right in the middle of all of it. And he ended up paying the price for it one day, I think, is probably what happened. There's a lot of things, a lot of theories about it. But I remember when I talked to him at the conference, I remember seeing his Ford Raptor truck. It was a Ford Raptor, and it had, the Ford Raptors are cool because they have kind of armor underneath and everything. And he was saying that, I'm getting ready to work on another project. I might call you up and see if you're interested. And that was the last time I ever saw him. I'm sure that other people had talked to him since, and maybe he chose not to work with me on the project. I don't really know, but that was the last time I saw him. And this video, I'm not so sure it actually came from.
I was, and tell out, I got to delete this Oz link now, because they're on my back about it. So you picked up about it. If you watch it, it's up to you. It's me doing it though, so you know it's honest. Okay, let's go back. Yeah, so I'll give you a minute or two. You haven't seen this, I was never here. You're going to be wrapped, trust me. You too, Talia.
That particular conference that I was at, but I remember him speaking about this, and so I dug up. I saw somebody share one of these videos, and I looked into the video and tried and found it. And so I'm going to play it for you guys, and I'm going to comment on it after we play it here.
So we have 8-year-olds that a pastor calls me.
Guys, if you find time to watch it, can you leave comments at the end? Because it's the only feedback I get. And you give good feedback, trust me.
In Kent, Ohio, both of them, twins, both of them have been created with subpersonalities, demonization, and parts that believe in a coming Führer, a coming world leader. The 20-year-olds that are third generation, parts of them can summon demons and draw them and release them in a church or on a believer. Every single state in the United States and every city has them. I want you to calculate this. It is to be physically and supernaturally, absolutely a secret. So these chosen ones, the covens that develop it, you can't have a chosen one without a coven that knows how to do this. You can't have a family line of them if it didn't begin with originally with Nazis who believed the Black Flame, the ancient brotherhood, that believed in the development of a master race, spiritually guided to become the God men, the super warriors. That number one.
Guys, I'll just tell you this. Wicked Witch of the West. www. W is the sixth letter in the Hebrew alphabet. www, the worst villain in the Bible. And that equals 666. 3 W's, 3 sixes. So the Wicked Witch from the West has that many in it.
Will help collapse the existing government and help then bring about an entire new world order. It is about the removal of peace on a multi-continental, multinational level. It is about the design, attack, and elimination of anybody they think are resistors. If you've heard about lists, it's correct. We have found that subpersonalities in multiples, living in cities everywhere, living by churches, sitting as sleepers in churches, subpersonalities already have their target in the church, already have their target with the radio hosts.
All right, guys, so that's the video. I just played a short clip of it. You could probably find all of his speeches on the Hear the Watchman.
That's a lot of Masons.
Page if they have one. I don't really know where that would be, but they might have one on YouTube. I found this one on
I'm out of this one.
X.com. But ultimately, I think the message here, when you look at what he's saying here, it really, like when I read this letter, like that's what stuck in my head was like, that's what Russ Dizdar is talking about, this kind of thing. And it really, though, the reason I wanted to talk to you guys isn't just so much to show you the letter and let you hear what Russ Dizdar said, but I also want to admonish you guys with some knowledge and some wisdom from the scriptures, because ultimately these people can pretend for a certain period of time, but there's fruits in people's lives that actually start showing eventually. And when you see those fruits, don't chalk them up as they just happen randomly. It wasn't normal for this to happen. Remember those red flags, like take them into account, because it's likely that those red flags are actual part of this person that they've been suppressing on purpose to keep you close, says actually. By their fruits you will know them.
Yeah, back up.
It also says by the love they have for one another. And so
Thank you.
Christians should have a lot of love for one another, but their fruits shouldn't lie. You know, there's people that I've known in the past that were a part of covens, for sure a part of covens. I don't think they were assigned to me, but I used to be in a metal band that played with a lot of satanic bands. And the way that these people are is they can be very nice. I mean, they can be extremely nice. I'm talking like best friend, boiled down to it, like you feel like really good about that person. But then there'll be random times where everything just show who they are. And so when people show you who they are, I say you should really take note of that and don't chalk it up as, well, it's just that couple times, you know, it only happens every now and then. Ultimately, we present a character, all of us do. We put our best foot forward. If I presented you how I was when I woke up this morning, I would look homeless probably. You'd see my beard going like this. Some of you might think I look homeless now. My hair would be like this. I'd probably have my shirt off and, you know, my chest would be exposed and I would look bad, right? But we put on a character, kind of, this is where the word character comes from. Does that person have character? You put on your character and you present yourself before people. And character isn't really what's on the inside. I know a lot of people say that, but ultimately your character is the person you present to the rest of the world. And then some people actually have people that are really the person that they present. And I try to make that me. I mean, most of you guys that have met me before, let me know what you think. But I pretty much try to be the same exact person I am on camera that I am in person, unless I'm having a bad day. You could catch me on a bad day sometimes. If I'm having one of those really bad days where everything's not going right for me. But ultimately, a person's going to remain the same. But when you start seeing inconsistencies with a person to where one day they're this way, one day they're that way, one day they believe in God, the next day they don't believe in God, one day they think it's okay to steal, one day they don't. And yes, that's a bug. Everybody's asking. I've got a light right here, a ring light, and I'm upstairs in my house. And so I leave the windows open sometimes. And so these bugs are coming in attracted to this light in front of me. It's pretty interesting too, because I can see a spider web that is formed on this bug. Without any more distractions, guys, I just want to say thank you so much for watching this. And if there's anything else that you guys would like to hear from me, if there's some kind of story or there's some kind of topic that you really want me to talk about, please put it in the comments. Let me know in the chat. And I love you guys, and I'm so thankful. Subscribe if you like this, hit the like button, share this out, because honestly, people probably need to hear this, because most people are naive, have no clue that this is even a possibility, but it is a possibility. In fact, it's a reality, and we need to know it. And I do think it ties into whatever's coming next. And I think that we're right there, right on the precipice of this being released. I really think it's very possible. So pray for me as I pray for you. And no matter what, the dust settles, the people that are left there will be left there. And I hope to see you guys there and talk to you guys soon. Thank you.
Okay, guys, that's it.
Oh, hi there. It's so good to see you. At Hem and Care, we've been caring